Her poster was really fun. She's got a great sense of humor. I think she likes cats. And she's going to talk about Bexarotene and how it counteracts ApoE4 related pathologies in young mice. And I think we'll enjoy this. This is the first of 2 hot topics on Bexarotene. So,
okay, hold on. Let me just this. Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay. I also enjoy moonlit walks and cats, so that's okay. I'd like to first thank the organizers for asking me to talk here and for naming me a hot topic. I enjoyed that. And what I'm going to talk about is Bexarotene and how it counteracts the ApoE4 pathologies in young target replacement mice. The first thing I'm going to introduce is our model, and then I'm going to show you how we use Bexarotene on this model to correct the pathologies. Our model is based on young, 4-month-old ApoE3 and ApoE4 target replacement mice. Aside from this target replacement mice, we haven't used any external manipulation on them. They're young, they're naive, and they have human ApoE3 or ApoE4 instead of their mouse ApoE. And what we looked for were biochemical markers for the ApoE4 pathologies, namely AD hallmarks such as A-beta-42 and tau hyperphosphorylation. We looked for synaptic markers, and one of them that I'm going to show is VGLUT1. And we also wanted to look for ApoE-related markers, such as one of the receptors, which is ApoE4. This is, of course, not the complete picture, so we also used behavioral testing, a complete battery of behavioral tests, of which I'm going to show you 2. And let's dive right in. So the first thing that I'm going to show is A-beta-42, and on the left you can see representative pictures of the CA3, which is the subregion of the hippocampus that I'm going to focus on, it showed the most robust results. And as you can see, the ApoE4 represented in the black bar showed higher levels of the A-beta-42 when compared to the ApoE3 mice. This was also the case when looking at tau hyperphosphorylation using the 88 marker, which is directed against residues at 202 and 205. We saw an increase in the levels of tau hyperphosphorylated in the ApoE4 mice when compared to the ApoE3 mice. When looking at VGLUT1, we saw a different picture, which is a decrease of the VGLUT1 marker in the ApoE4 mice when compared to the ApoE3. And this was the same in the ApoE2 marker. So these are the 4 markers that I'm going to focus on and also use when we're showing the Bexarotene treatment. And the next thing that we did is subject the mice to behavioral tests. The first thing that we did was Morris water maze. This is a standard one. You put the hidden platform in the pool. You just throw the mice in and wait for them to either drown or find the platform, which they did. The first 4 days, the platform stayed in the same place, and as you can see, the ApoE4 mice took longer time to learn the position of the hidden platform. But by day 4, they reached the plateau that the ApoE3 did. So at this point, you can do one of 2 things. You can either do what we call a probe test, which is take out the platform and see where the mice swim, if they swim in the proximity of the platform. Or the other option is what we did, is change the location of the platform. This requires the mice to both extinct the position, the firmer position of the platform, and relearn a new position. And as you can see, both mouse groups did poorly on the day that we switched the platform. But the ApoE3 mice picked their act together pretty quickly and reached the plateau similar to the ones we saw before. But the ApoE4 mice took longer, and they haven't reached that exact plateau. The second test that we did is an object recognition test. It's the usual one. You present 2 similar objects to the mice, then you switch one, and we're presuming that the mouse like to explore a new object more than the familiar one. So the ApoE3 mice behaved normally and went to the new object more frequently than the old one, but the ApoE4 mice went for a similar amount of time and visits to both objects, reading into it or translating that they don't remember the flammarian object. So these two tests, I'm going to pop into this summary and say that here. The biochemical phenotypes that we saw in the ApoE4 mice comprise of a beta-42 increase, tau hyperphosphorylation, a V-GLUT decrease, as well as an ApoE2 decrease, and two behavioral deficits in the Morris-Water maze and the object recognition test. So we saw these deficits in the ApoE4 mice, and we thought now next was how ApoE4 exerts these pathologies. And to further acute the questions, we thought about how does ApoE4 differ from ApoE3. So if you know Danny, you know this slide through all the different manipulations that it went through. The ApoE3 is a smiley face. He's all good. He's the control. And now we think about how ApoE4 can differ from ApoE3. So the first option is perhaps a gain of structure. The ApoE4 has a different structure than the ApoE3, a gain of it, such as a different conformation than the ApoE3. Another option is a loss of structure. As you see, the ApoE3 has a crown and a skirt, and the ApoE4 hasn't got the same skirt, or the hat, kind of naked. And we read one of the options that we see for a loss of structure is maybe a lipid loss of structure. The third option is just a loss of amount. The ApoE3 doesn't differ. The ApoE4 doesn't differ so much structurally from the ApoE3, but there's just less of it. This is, of course, backed up by literature showing that ApoE4 carriers have lower amounts of ApoE than the ApoE3 carriers. So next we thought about how we can target these options by treatment, and the gain of structure approach was done utilizing anti-ApoE4 antibodies, and you maybe checked out Ishai's poster yesterday regarding that issue, which leaves us with a loss, either a structural loss or an amount loss that we have to compensate for in some way. And this just leads us to the Bexarotene. So when we thought about how to approach a compensation approach, Bexarotene just popped up, and Bexarotene is an RXR ligand, as you can see here, and it upregulates the expression of ApoE and two of its lipidating proteins, ABCA and ABCG, through the LXR system. And this just fell into our laps like God's gift. In 2012, was Landreth Group published this paper in Science showing that Bexarotene has beneficial results for APP-PS1 mice, namely reduced A-beta levels, improvement in cognitive function, and it does so perhaps by increasing the levels of ApoE, ABCA, and ABCG. This, in our eyes, was kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, we could increase the levels of ApoE4, causing a catastrophic result in our mice, and they will all die and everything. Or we could upregulate the lipidation in some sort, change it, and cause beneficial results in our mice. So we're gambling people in our lab, and we decided to throw the dice and see what happens. We used our model, which is the young ApoE3, ApoE4 target replacement mice, and we gave daily oral lavages for 10 days of Bexarotene, 100 mg per kg, and we took a look at the markers, which I mentioned before, as well as the behavioral tests. And this is what we saw. So the A-beta-42 showed similar results for the controls we saw in the naive, a higher level in the ApoE4 mice, but when giving Bexarotene, both mouse groups, meaning E3 and E4s, showed a lower amount of A-beta-42. When looking at the 88 marker for tau hyperphosphorylation, we saw again the same picture for the control as the naive, and when giving Bexarotene, the levels of tau hyperphosphorylation decreased for the ApoE4 mice. When looking at the V-GLUT marker, which I remind you was lower in the ApoE4 mice, we saw an increase for the ApoE4 mice, rendering them pretty much similar to the ApoE3 mice. But we saw no effect for the ApoE2 marker, meaning the lower amounts of ApoE2 in ApoE4 mice remained the same after the Bexarotene treatment. Next, we subjected the mice to the cognitive tests that we've seen previously. The first is the Morris-Water maze. And again, we see for the control mice the same picture that we saw for the naive, meaning ApoE4 mice take longer to learn the position of the platform. But when given Bexarotene, you can see that they improve their performance and they either swim really quickly or just find the platform really quickly as the ApoE3 mice. We did a probe test in this case, and we see that while in the control mice, the ApoE4 mice swim pretty randomly according to where the platform was, when giving Bexarotene, they seem to be more goal-targeted to the platform coordinate, meaning they swim in that place as do the ApoE3 mice. The next cognitive test that we did was the object recognition test. And again, you can see the control. And when given Bexarotene, the ApoE4 mice are more engaged with the new object as the ApoE3 mice. So, just to summarize, as you see, for the phenotype of A-beta accumulation, we see a reversal when using Bexarotene. Same goes for tau hyperphosphorylation. The Bexarotene helps the ApoE4 mice in this case. In the V-GLUT decrease, we see a reversal again using Bexarotene. This is not the case for the ApoE2 decrease, which we see no effect for the Bexarotene in. And when looking at the cognitive impairment, we see a reversal of the phenotype by Bexarotene. This is all nice and well, but of course they had to put some mechanism into it. And we took a look at the first thing that comes to mind is looking at the ApoE levels, which in the Landreth paper we saw an increase of when they used the mouse ApoE. But we didn't. As you can see, for the control mice, there are lower levels of ApoE in the ApoE4 mice, and this is the same for the Bexarotene mice, meaning our great results that we see reversing the phenotype is probably not due to a change, or not to a major change, in the levels of the target replacement ApoE. But when we looked at the ABCG and ABCA proteins, which are lipidating proteins of ApoE, we saw an increase for both the ApoE3 and ApoE4 mice in both ABCG and ABCA. So we hypothesized that the beneficial results that we see in the target replacement mice is probably due to either more lipidation or different lipidation or something with the lipidation, rather than a play on the levels of ApoE itself. That's it. I'd like to thank my lab and everyone in it, and especially Danny hovering over all of us, giving a presentation and all. And I'd like to thank you for listening and giving me this platform.